Hi everyone, I'm Victor and this is my review of the 11-inch M4 iPad Pro. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I actually want to take a different approach to this review because I don't just want to be reading out loud the specs that you can find on Apple's website. So I'm really gonna focus on what differentiates this iPad from previous iPads, and I do want to share my thoughts on what the iPad really is and what it's for, and why I think everybody gets this device wrong. So stay tuned and let's begin. So design-wise, it's the thinnest product Apple ever made. As you guys know, it's 5.1 millimeters thick for the 13-inch model and 5.3 millimeters thick for the 11-inch model. And the first thing I want to address is that a lot of people were saying nobody asked for a thinner iPad. And this is the first thing that I think most people get wrong. The iPad is supposed to be a super portable device, and you're supposed to be able to hold it in your hand while you're touching the screen or using the Apple Pencil. And although thickness doesn't really affect that too much, weight does. I had the 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the M2 processor, and I'm gonna tell you, that thing was heavy. Like, it really was. If you held it for more than a few minutes, you would really start to feel it, and that's just not ideal for a tablet. Now, for the 11-inch version, that wasn't much of a problem, and that's probably the reason why Apple didn't cut the thickness down as much as they did with the 13-inch being the bigger model. It was also the heavier one, and it just made using it a lot more uncomfortable. So I think Apple made the right choice by making it thinner and therefore lighter, and now it's probably gonna be more pleasurable to use as a tablet, which it is, and most people seem to forget it. So I think the new design is very welcome, and I say that in quotes because it's not much of a redesign, but it's definitely an improvement. Then the second thing that Apple focused the most on their event is the screen. It has a Tandem OLED screen that has the same peak brightness as the Mini LED on the 2022 13-inch Pro, and even higher brightness on regular SDR content at 1000 nits versus 600 nits on the previous model. And I will tell you, this is a stunning display. The colors are super vibrant, the blacks are really dark, but to be super honest, if you're coming from a Mini LED, I don't think the difference is that noticeable. The Mini LED looked stunning to me, and the Tandem OLED looks just as good. The speakers, at least on paper, got a downgrade from a 5-speaker system to a 4-speaker system, but I couldn't really tell the difference. I didn't have both iPads side by side. I sold my 2022 iPad Pro and got the new M4 iPad Pro. So I think the speakers on the new models still sound amazing. They can definitely fill up a room, and even at maximum volume, sound is never distorted. And I think you're gonna get a very pleasing experience with them, whether it be watching movies or listening to music. The front-facing camera was moved to the landscape orientation, and it just makes sense because most of Apple's accessories prop up the iPad in the landscape position, so that's a welcome change. Along with the new iPad, I tried out the Apple Pencil Pro, and it's great. It feels very premium. The new features like the barrel roll and the squeeze function are pretty useful. So now, instead of having to reach for that tool menu and switch back and forth between tools, you can now just squeeze the bottom part of the pencil and you're gonna get your tool palette, at least on the Notes app. But third-party implementation is up to developers. The rear-facing camera didn't really get an upgrade, which is kind of a bummer. Like, it doesn't have to be the iPhone 15 Pro's 48 megapixel sensor, but just an improved 12 megapixel sensor would be nice, because the iPad's camera has aged a bit and it doesn't look great. Which is not really a problem because this device is not really for photography. You're just using it to scan documents. But still, if you had a better camera, your scanned documents would look even better. And the final thing I do have to talk about, but I'm not going to get into it too much, is the M4 processor. People are really mad that it's a super powerful processor and it's running iPad OS, which is very limited. But like the thing is that Apple had to put the M4 in there for a few reasons. First, they actually said it in the event. They needed a new processor for the Tandem OLED. And then there's also heat generation that people don't talk about a lot. But the M3 is actually hotter than the M2. And that's really a problem on a device like the iPad because there's not a lot of room for that heat to dissipate. So the M4 being more efficient makes sure that it doesn't get as hot as the M3. And Apple also cleverly designed the new Apple logo to be made out of copper and improve that heat dissipation. So the M4 is not that overkill, it's better suited for the iPad's form factor. And now I'm gonna talk about why I think that most people are wrong about the new iPad Pros, because they keep comparing it to MacBooks and they keep saying that it's the best iPad ever, but it's just an iPad. And I think that argument makes no sense at all because, you know, when you get the iPhone, it's just an iPhone. When you get a MacBook, it's just a MacBook. What did you expect? A washing machine? I don't know, it's written iPad on the box. And because Apple created the Pro, they released this chaos in the world that people just expected to work for every professional. And that's really not the case. And it isn't the case for most devices because different professionals have different needs. Considering that the Pro in iPad Pro is for professional, we do have to remember that it was released in 2015 along with the Apple Pencil and that bigger display. And that's no coincidence because it was made for professional digital artists. Apple saw an opportunity there to introduce the Apple Pencil and allow people to directly interact with their art on a powerful, thin, light device, and they absolutely succeeded because now the iPad Pro is one of the most used tools by these types of professionals. But then people expect the iPad to be the best for video editors, or they wanted code on the iPad. And the iPad Pro is the best tool for certain things, such as digital art. But it's not the best tool for other things. We have to remember that the iPad doesn't have a fan, and that means that it will thermal throttle after a while. No matter how powerful the M4 chip is, it's going to throttle eventually. So for professional video editors, which are using loads of 4K or even 8K streams, they're better off with something that has a fan on it, like an M3 Pro, or even better, a Mac Studio. So the truth is that even though many people complain that they want to replace their laptop with the iPad, the truth is that they wouldn't. Even if it ran full Mac OS, if it could boot iPad OS and Mac OS, or if Apple added a ton of features that would make it feel more like a desktop operating system, they still wouldn't use it as their work machine because it doesn't have a fan. Tech reviewers would literally install macOS on their iPads, make a review, say that it's awesome, and then never use it again. So this is the type of thing that I think people don't really know what they want. They don't think it through too much and understand the pros and cons. And that's why I think you should look at the iPad differently and not listen to those people saying that the iPad needs macOS, that they need it to be their primary machine, because it was not made to be that. When Steve Jobs announced it back in 2010, he said that the whole purpose of the iPad is to have a device that's in between a smartphone and a Mac. So it's light, it's portable, it's easy to use, but you get great screen real estate to browse the web, watch video, listen to music, read books, and now with the Apple Pencil, take notes and create art. It was never made to replace the Mac because the Mac doesn't need replacing. The Mac is great. I actually tried to replace my MacBook with an iPad for a long time. I had the iPad Pro for like 8 years and it kind of sucked because the iPad is great at being an iPad, at doing iPad things, at content consumption mostly, and creation for some. So this is the point that I'm trying to make. Apple has tons of different computers for different things. The iPhone is their best communication device because it's always with you. It has cellular connectivity. It can make calls. It's also Apple's best camera device. It's thin, it's light, it's portable, it fits in your pocket. And that's why it has 3 cameras, at least on the Pro models. The Apple Watch is Apple's best computer for health and fitness because it's literally on you, so you can have a bunch of sensors checking your heartbeat, your blood oxygen levels, and that's just something that the iPhone could never do. The Mac is the best tool for productivity because it offers a big screen, a fully fledged operating system that you can customize the heck out of, and the iPad is the best casual computer for content consumption, especially on the go, because you can hold it in your hands while you're watching a video or following a recipe, or you can prop it up when you're running on the treadmill, which is something the Mac could never do. You can take it anywhere because it's much more portable than a Mac. Now, I do blame Apple a little bit for making people want the iPad to be more like a Mac because they released the Magic Keyboard and now it's even made of aluminum and has a bigger trackpad, and they said it feels just like a MacBook, but it doesn't and it never will. The Mac is much better to use on your lap because it's bottom heavy and not top heavy like the iPad. So you don't really have to worry about it tipping over. And with the iPad, you do have to worry about that. It's not as great of an experience. Plus, it makes the iPad twice as heavy and twice as thick. So all of those great things that make the iPad, you kind of lose them when you attach it to the Magic Keyboard. Which is why I think most people should not get the Magic Keyboard. They should get just the Smart Folio to protect the glass, because of course you don't want to break that. But enjoy the iPad as a tablet, and typing on it is just fine. Unless you're like a writer, I really don't think you should get the Magic Keyboard. And even if you are a writer, maybe the iPad isn't the device you should be using, because I don't think it's the best device for that. But if you want to use it, Apple does sell you the $300 or $350 Magic Keyboard, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's one of the most overpriced Apple products ever. It costs the same as the 10th generation iPad. We're comparing a keyboard to a fully fledged tablet. Those two products cost the same. So I really think Apple kind of makes fun of their customers with the Magic Keyboard. They're like, okay, you want to use it as a laptop? All right, but it's going to cost you. You need to think about what you're buying this device for, and then you can buy some accessories or not. If you don't need the Apple Pencil, if you don't need to draw or take handwritten notes, you don't get the Apple Pencil. If you don't do a lot of typing, don't get the Magic Keyboard. The iPad is fine as it is, as a tablet. And that's who this device is for people who want a tablet. And that's really the answer here to the question of whether you should buy this device or not. If you want something that does laptop things most of the time and sometimes can be a tablet, well, I'm sorry, Apple doesn't offer that device. Maybe try to go with something like a Surface. I'm sorry, it's going to run Windows, but that's what you have. Or maybe the Galaxy Tab S9, but apps aren't as good as on the iPad, so there's a trade-off there. The iPad is for people who want a tablet first that could do some of your laptop tasks, but it's very unlikely that it will do those things better than a laptop. So these are basically my thoughts on the iPad, and I'm sure there are many people who actually replaced their laptops with the iPad Pro, but there are so many compromises here that I really cannot recommend that. It's a safer option to just go for a MacBook Air. You can get it for less than the iPad Pro. The iPad just has many limitations as a laptop. But some of these limitations are exactly what make it great as a tablet, such as not having a fully accessible file system allows you to have apps like Netflix and Max that allow you to download content to watch later, so that when you're in a plane and you don't have access to Wi-Fi, you can watch your content, and you can't do that on a Mac. And the reason is that if you could do it on a Mac, you could easily find where those files are being stored, and then you could pirate them. But the iPad Because it's limited, all of the content downloaded from those apps are hidden, they're protected, and then you can't access them. So that's why these companies allow you to download their content. And that's the whole story of the iPad. On the iPad, you have an app-first experience. And on laptops, you usually have a browser-first operating system. I know you still have tons of apps, but like when you want to access YouTube or Netflix or Google Drive, you do all of that from the browser. So there's a different philosophy here. And one is better than the other for certain things. People complain about the iPad Pro not being pro enough, but like, think about the iPhone. Is the iPhone Pro for professionals and the regular iPhone for non-professionals? Not really. Pro in the iPhone lineup just means the better one, the more high-end version. And people are willing to pay for that. So the same applies to the iPad. You don't need an iPad Pro. You could get by with the iPad Air, and even with the 10th Gen iPad. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.